Primer Festival Internacional de Fotografía de Calle en México.
Para mí la fotografía de calle es un sentido muy introspectivo. Aparte de reconocerte, encontrarte con las personas que observas a diario. Me siento libre, me gusta recorrer las calles, sentirlas, vivirlas. Me encantan los colores, la magia de la gente. Aparte, la Ciudad de México se me hace bien mágica para hacer foto de calle, porque en cualquier esquina encuentras un mundo de historias.
Para mí, la fotografía de calle no es un género de fotografía, ni siquiera creo que sea una línea fotográfica específicamente realizada en la calle. Yo creo que es una derivación, sí, como una especie de fotografía que trabaja con historias que suceden en momentos muy específicos, que pueden ser o no pueden ser dentro de la calle. Y creo que lo que lo hace genuino, lo que hace la fotografía de calle es tener el valor que tiene, es el hecho de ser tan espontáneo, tan único, y que realmente no puede ser dado en otro espacio que no sean espacios urbanos donde exista el factor humano. La fotografía para mí, aparte de ser mi trabajo, también es mi vida, y es la forma en que consigo vivir y además trabajar.
La fotografía de calle es un medio que utilizo para disfrutar de mi tiempo de ocio y del tiempo o de los tiempos que me ha tocado vivir. Es un reconocimiento del entorno por donde piso y ando y de conectar con lo que me rodea, jugando y creando con las imágenes mi propio espacio. Me gusta el hecho de que sea un recurso tan accesible y una fuente inagotable de historias que va creando una especie de diario de memoria personal que en un futuro seguro que agradezco.
Para mí la foto de calle es una oportunidad para registrar cosas que la gente normalmente no ve, cosas que suelen pasar desapercibidas e incluso también poner atención en cosas que a la persona fotógrafa le genera un interés muy particular, ¿no? Ver cosas que generalmente la gente no tomaría en cuenta y sobre todo también una oportunidad para documentar nuestra cotidianidad, documentar la cultura, ¿no? Por ejemplo, la comida callejera, las tradiciones, lo que a la gente le llama la atención, y creo que eso y mucho más es todavía la fotografía de calle.
La fotografía de calle siempre ha sido más bien verla en un sentido de cotidianeidad, más que en una acepción propia de street photography. Ha sido más como pensar en lo cotidiano del deambular de las personas todos los días. Yo empecé haciendo fotografía en la ciudad de Oaxaca y las condiciones allá pues se reducen a un concepto más como de una población indígena, a diferencia de aquí, que como pueden ver, pues hay muchísima gente, no hay una cantidad de historias todos los días que puede uno estar haciendo.
My name is Betty Goh, and I'm from Singapore. I picked up street photography in 2018 and fell deeply in love with it. My specialty is abstract street photography, focusing on reflections, shadows, silhouettes, shapes, and spaces. I first started with simple shots, but soon developed my own distinctive style of combining multiple elements into one single shot. Originality and self-challenge are important to me. I aim to showcase a sense of mystery and complexity through my style of photography. Although most of my work does not show one's face directly, I still think my photos carry a soul in them. Abstract street photography brings out the creative side of me and helps me develop visual sensitivity of my surroundings. I always try my best to photograph something different. Photography gives me a great sense of freedom, and the opportunity for me to think on my feet in turn makes me feel excited. Looking forward to see you at the festival.
We've been a while since it felt like this. We've been a while since it felt like this. We've been a while since it felt like this. We've been a while since it felt like this. Been a while since it felt like this.
Buenos días a todos. Bienvenidos al segundo día de actividades del primer Festival Internacional de Fotografía de Calle en México, MX Street Photo Fest. Agradecemos a nuestros patrocinadores, el Poder Ejecutivo del Estado de Querétaro a través de la Secretaría de Cultura y Secretaría de Turismo por las facilidades para la realización de este evento, a Tecnoplane, MF Fotolab, Fujifilm México, Mediabus, SGR y Asociados. Iniciamos con la charla de este tercer día, dirigida por Chris Sospek. Chris Sospek es un fotógrafo callejero y documental de Washington, D.C. Su trabajo se define por la captura de imágenes absurdas y profundas extraídas de la vida cotidiana. Ha sido reconocido y su trabajo ha sido exhibido alrededor del mundo en Miami, Bélgica, Alemania, Italia, Rumania, Georgia, Emiratos Árabes Unidos, Reino Unido y, por supuesto, en México. Ha publicado los zines Gratuity, Included, All Customs, Better Voice y Suspect Device. Ha sido publicado por Rolling Stone, Vice, Photo District, Huffington Post, Leica Magazine, entre otros. Un aplauso de bienvenida para Chris.
Rush is check 1, 2. Is anyone going to? Is there a translator? Did someone check? Hey, okay. So my name's Chris Suspect, as everyone knows. That's not my real name, and I'll get into that in a minute. Hector asked me to do a presentation. I was going to do one that I've done many times before, but he wanted me to do one about how I found my voice and how I basically learned to become a photographer. So it starts off, my journey to photography starts off long before I was a photographer. I was very much into punk rock music when I was younger. This is in Washington, D.C. in like 1983, I think. And this is a photo that the Washington Post took. And that's me outside of the 930 Club, which was like the big punk club in Washington, D.C. I think I was 14 there. And then as a youngster and as someone in a band, I was very much into the album cover art, particularly the ones that used images. And this one in the top left, this band SNFU from Canada, the image that they're using for their album cover is a very famous photo by Dion Arbus. And then the Dead Kennedys one is from a riot that happened in San Francisco, I think in 1982. This is a band called Discharge. And this kind of imagery I was like just drawn to. And then when I got into a band and started playing, I started researching, like, where do I find these kinds of images? So I'd go to the library and check out books on war photography or crime photography or just photojournalism, looking for interesting images. And this is one that became our first album cover. And I actually forget where that image is from. And these are some flyers that used some images. So I was really drawn to one photographer I remember in particular was Luigi, Arthur Felig. And so I was looking at photo books, not even being a photographer, just kind of looking for shocking images, really. So this is kind of an influence. I'm going to give a very short message about translation. Oh.
Para las personas que nos acompañan que no hablen inglés, tenemos un intérprete en la parte de atrás de la sala. Que puedan estar
Okay. Okay, and so I wanted to play a clip of my first band I was in called The Suspects, and that's where I get my last name from. So my real last name is Chris Kandayan. It's an Armenian name. And whenever anyone sees it written, they can't pronounce it. So everybody just started calling me Chris Suspect back then. And then when I got on the internet in like 1994 at AOL, they asked me what my name was to be. And I just wrote Chris Suspect, and I've kept that the same on the internet ever since. So that's where my name comes from. And this is just a short clip of, that's me right there. Now I have no... What happened here? But anyway, you don't need the music. But this is, you know, long before photography, I was doing this kind of stuff. See, the title of my talk is appropriate: Punk Rock and Failure, because we're. So I will keep moving on here. Oh, I can't move on. No. It goes into here. Switch the audio to the speakers.
No. Please continue, please.
Okay, but I can't continue until. Okay. You hit the full presentation. Okay, so we have music now. So we've seen this a couple times, so I'll skip. So then I got my first camera, and this camera came with the birth of my son, Strummer, in 2006. And at that time, I just basically used it to photograph my family. And then when I was doing that, I started getting interested in photography and learning about it. So I got a DSLR, I think it was a Canon 60D, and I started photographing my friends. And I had no idea what I was doing. I knew nothing really about the history of photography. But I did know, in addition to my friends, I was recalling the photography of the punk rock days and that I was researching for flyers. So I would go out to protests. And most of this is from Occupy DC and I don't know, IMF protests. So, but I really had no idea what I was doing at the time. Then I also got into street photography, but I didn't know I was doing street photography. I was just walking around with a camera. And then I got interested in music because that's kind of where I came from. So I started to photograph my friends' bands. And then I started to learn how to then I started getting creative with the camera. Like I started getting into using a flash against the sunflower photo, and then doing slow shutter speeds and trying to turn myself into a ghost. And then I did a promo shot with a videographer friend of mine, Ray. And then I started playing with plastic cameras, like lomography cameras, and then light trails, and then multiple exposures. So I just started kind of exploring different techniques, learning how to do things. And then I started doing embarrassing projects like this one here. This is one all about street textures, and I thought I was a real artist. And I forgot I had this. So putting this presentation together, I kind of like went back in time, and I forgot I even did this project, and I can't believe I'm even showing it. So then I decided to get kind of serious about photography because at one point, a group of people in Washington, D.C., they called themselves Strata. They were a street photography collective. They saw some of my photos on Flickr and were like, hey, will you join our street photography collective? And I was like, what's street photography? And basically, they're like, you know, like Cartier-Bresson or Gary Winogrand or Elliot Irwood or whatever. And I had no idea. So I actually started to research those photographers. And at that time, I decided to enroll as a continuing education student at the Corcoran School of Art. And this image is by this woman from Washington, D.C., Carol Guzzi. I think it was like 1979. Robert Mapplethorpe had an exhibit there, and it basically caused this huge controversy. And they had a big protest that shut the exhibit down. So this protest is they're projecting Robert Mapplethorpe onto the museum or onto the Corcoran School of Art. So I was doing street photography. I had a teacher. Her name is Terry Weissbach. She was very much into color, and we were developing and processing and enlarging color photographs. And we had a year-end project. And so this was my year-end project. She was also not a fan of street photography. She was telling me it was dead. And that everything's already been done in street photography. But I didn't listen. I had to submit 10 images for my final project. This was my final project. I started with this kind of as a joke for her because I was like, yes, street photography is dead. So I'm going to start with an image that looks like someone's dead. And because I was also reading books about other photographers, I started kind of, when I'm walking around, recognizing situations or scenes that seem similar to things that they had shot. So I try to copy that and kind of learn. And this was in Dublin, Ireland. I was just trying to see like how complex a scene I could make, but also keep the elements separated. This is like a fun one that I think I saw some interesting photographs that influenced me, so I was mimicking that. This is also a thing I learned is like photographs can kind of tell a story, and in this you have like the victor, and then this little girl crying, but then if you look at the back of his pants, they're all wet, like he peed himself. So it's like, to me, it's like a Pyrrhic victory. This is all about the color, because my teacher was really about color, so this is all about just the reds. This is actually at the White House, but this one's about kind of mystery because his head is in the shade. I was trying to like evoke a feeling or evoke something more than what's just being depicted in the frame. And I was basically learning this, not from my class, but from all the books I was researching. This is in Washington, D.C. Banana. This is the photograph that my teacher loved the most. So nice color photograph. And I was also learning about, like, if you're going to put a pole in the middle of a photograph, you know, on either side of it. Yeah, Terry Weifenbach. This is one I was interested in because of the colors, but also the repetition in the patterns of the tag and the crosswalk. And this is just a callback to the first photo, which, you know, about street photography being dead. And I like the fact that the tree in the middle is dead. So, two dead things. So that was basically, I got an A on it. So, and these are like some of the books that I read, but I have a lot more. So, you know, during this time, I was reading the Americans, of course, by Robert Frank. Alex Saltz. Actually, this book came out later than that, but Alex Saltz is amazing. Anders Peterson is a big influence of mine. And I also go beyond street photography. So here's Todd Meadows' book, Silver Meadow. It's more like a fine art book. And then I really get it. Aperture has this whole workshop series. And this is one Mary Ellen Mark did on taking environmental portraits. It's really good. And then I also start reading about the philosophy of photography. So photography changes everything, which is sort of about how the advent of photography changed the media and influenced advertising and all kinds of things. Core Curriculum is also an awesome book. It's by Todd Papa George, who was a buddy of Gary Winogrand. We shoot together, and he became a photography teacher at Yale. But this book really gets into kind of the philosophy and what images can mean and the importance of, let's say, symbols or things you can use for symbols in your photographs. Bystander, of course, is a classic. We actually have someone in this room who has a picture in this book. This is Andrew Gluckman right here. So he's featured in that book. And then Iraqi, I got really into Japanese photography. So during this time, I was always taking music photographs, and I got asked to be part of a gallery show, Govinda Gallery in Washington, D.C., and they specialized in music. And when I was there, some people came up to me and said, "Hey, would you like to do a book of your photographs?" And I was like, "Sure." And their publishing company was called Empty Stretch, and they were fine art publishers. So it was really surprised to have like a music associated book with them. But anyway, so these were some of my first, this is my first photo book. And these are just some examples of photos from the book. And one of the things too, I learned about when I was researching, you know, not only in the class at the Corcoran, but also all the self-education I did, I started applying like elements of street photography to my music photography. So instead of focusing on just the singer or the guitar player, I started focusing on the crowd or, you know, other elements in the frame. And, you know, if your punk rock photos aren't good enough, you're not getting kicked in the head enough. So this is a very close shot. And all this stuff is from Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. So, and then the great thing about this book, I wound up sending it off to LFI magazine, which is like a photography magazine, because I'd never seen them do a like a photo essay in there on music and they called me or they emailed me back and said, yeah, we'd love to do it, but not for the magazine. We have an exhibition that we'd like you to be a part of. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, well, you know, where? They're like, oh, in Cologne, Germany. And then, so I got online on the internet and started researching like what photography festivals are there, because she didn't mention what it was. And I found one, and it looked like this sort of small festival that was, I don't forget the name of it, but it had some people I recognized in there, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I emailed her back, yeah, this looks really cool. She's like, no, it's not that festival, it's Photokina, and Photokina turns out to be the world's largest photography festival. So there were like thousands of people there, and I was with all these famous Magnum photographers and stuff, and brought on stage, and it was the most amazing. I was like, it's going to be all downhill from here. So that was really cool. That book wound up getting the gallery representation in Germany, and then wound up having shows in different countries because of it. I had one in London. I had one in Tbilisi, Georgia. That was also a great festival. And all this time, I also started getting into submitting to contests. And when I was going through, I haven't looked at this image in forever, but I thought it was a good one to represent the concept of contest, because there must have been like an Elvis contest here. And to me, they're all like contesting for this woman's attention as well. So I started, this is the first street photography contest I entered, and also the finalist, Chicago Photographic Society 2012. This was the first edition of the Miami Street Photography Festival in 2012 as well. This was like a contest for a book publisher, and this is actually probably one of my most favorite street photographs. This is Petty Thieves in 2013, Miami Street Photography Festival in 2014, Washington City Paper in 2015, Photo Week DC in 2016, and this was actually not a single image submission, part of a series. So I started working on series and started to think about, how do photographs speak to each other? How can they, be presented, let's say, in a narrative way, or a disjointed narrative way, or just creative ways to kind of present your work. This is Street Photo San Francisco, another series. This is Lucent Art in Rome in 2017. There was a travel photography contest I entered, Exposed DC, so this is from Romania. Brussels Street Photography Festivals. They had a Made in Brussels Photography Fest, and I'd only been to Brussels once before, and that was for like 4 days. And I took a photo there. And then when I won this contest, everyone in Brussels was like upset. Like, how does someone not from Brussels, only been here once for 4 days, win this contest? This is the Street Photography Festival in Poland in 2019. This photo was taken in Romania. This was one in Los Angeles called Square Peg Round Hole, and this was at Photo LA, which is a big event. This is Exposed DC. They're kind of a group in DC that does these photographs, and this photo was taken during the pandemic in 2021, and it's like you can't tell because no one's wearing any masks. And then in 2022, I won the Abbey Roads Music Photography Award for photography in 2021. And they wanted a shot that defined music for like during the pandemic. And so what they liked about this one is all the people wearing the masks in it. But that was really sweet to go to the Beatles studio, and they flew me over to London. It was really awesome. And then this was actually taken in Oaxaca, and I do a lot of street photography, but some documentary work as well. And I've been working on this conceptual project about climate change, anxiety, and Mother Nature and humanity. And this one I call Espadine. It's taken in an agave meditation. And basically, you know, for me, this kind of speaks to the sort of change that's happened in the mezcal industry in Oaxaca with all these foreigners coming and buying up all the agriculture, and what it's doing to the local folks who live there, who has, you know, family farms and stuff that are now being bought up. So this was selected by Saatchi Art and it was an NFT. So I want to take a moment and have a little intermission, and I hope the audio works on this. So during this time, I became friends with this band called Low Cut Connie, and they asked me if I would do a music video for them, but based on my photography and how I shoot. So what I did was mount a GoPro on top of my Leica and with my flash, and basically we created this sort of scenario of people going to see them play live in Philadelphia. And there was we had 4 people that were sort of plants to help get things going. And we reserved 2 suites at the Holiday Inn Express and filled it with a bunch of booze, balloons, sex toys, and invited everybody from the show back to the hotel. And basically all I did was photograph it. So this is this. Oh. There you go. There we go.
I used to be a soldier. Now I'm getting older. Start to feel so guilty. Lots of maybe.
So that was the music video I did. And so that was featured in like Rolling Stone, Spin magazine, went a whole bunch of places, and it was their most popular video that they've done. But all of this stuff, contests are cool, but like recently, I'm really more into like working on series and books, and that's where it's at for me. So sort of an evolution from the single image. And so this is during the pandemic when that happened and you couldn't go out or do anything. I decided I was going to publish 4 books in a year, and they're like small books. And this was the first one, gratuity included. And this one kind of had this theme of sort of like the party crazy photo, like you just saw the video of. That was the vibe I was going for this book. So it's called Gratuity Included, and there's just some images on it. And some of these are street photography, some of them are not. I've been mixing kind of the concept of mixing those two things together in series and presentations. This is a total street photograph. This was in Miami, and I have no idea what's going on with all these Post-it notes on her. In Germany, in my hotel room, and these are 2 German soap opera actresses, and they really liked my photography at the exhibit I had in Germany, and they were like, "You got to shoot us, you got to photograph us." And it was like 3 in the morning at that point, and I was like, "Well, the only place we go is my hotel room." This is in Miami. This was at a bachelor party for a friend of mine. This was at a Low Cut Connie show in New York City. This violent looking scene is from a drag show at a local bar in DC called Slash Run. So the next book I did was one called Leather Boys, and this is an interesting story. When I was out doing street photography, I saw a guy wearing leather chaps that were his ass was hanging out, and he was walking down the street, and I was like, something interesting has to happen here. And so I followed him, and I was hoping like a nun or a priest would walk by or something to juxtapose that, but it never happened. But I followed him he went to a hotel, and then outside the hotel, there were all these other similar people dressed like that, smoking cigarettes. I'm like, what's going on in this hotel? So I went into the hotel and went downstairs, and there was a big mass of leather daddies, gay leather guys. And I was scared out of my mind because I'd never been in that situation. I had my camera. I took like a couple photos. And then immediately after that, I asked some gay friends of mine, like, do you know like what's going on at this hotel? Like, and one of them were like, oh yeah, that's the Mid-Atlantic Leather Fest. And I was like, will you go with me? I want to photograph there, but I don't know anything about the culture. So he took me there, and then I wound up meeting the guy that runs the whole thing, and he turned out to be a fan of photography and knew of my work already, but never met me. And he's like, you can come in and photograph whatever you want. If anyone says anything, tell them to talk to me. And nobody ever said anything the entire 7 years I went there. So, but these are photos from that. So, and all of this is being influenced by street photography. And they have like these puppies. They do this puppy play. I don't quite get the fascination with it, but it's interesting visually. And it's sort of a food photograph. And I know I saw these 2 guys, and I was like, this is a really interesting look. I need to document that. This is a guy, and they in the hotel, like in the hallways or the rooms, they had these kind of crosses set up for this kind of behavior. So more of these puppies playing with a balloon. And this is what I saw when I walked in the first time. This is like overlooking into the lobby. So it's kind of like a weird. And then the next book I did was all work from Romania. And this is when I got the idea of using like a prop. I created this mirror that that my models would wear as a mask. And I discovered that when the mirror hit the sun, it created this explosion in my lens. And then, so after I went to this photography festival for like 3 years in a row, and it's a really long one. It's like a 10-day festival, so you get to spend a lot of time there. And it's not just street photography; it's everything, fashion photography. And so during the pandemic, I was like, I really want to do something with it. And then, when I was there, I heard about these like kind of these fairies that would come out in summer. And if you saw one, it would mean you'd have a great harvest for the next year. So what I did with this book was kind of weave this kind of concept of the fairies throughout, like kind of some street photography kind of stuff, and kind of create this kind of fairy tale. And in the book, it's separated by chapters, so they have a lot of like textiles in Romania that are historic, but all the textiles you can tell by looking at them if you're from there, by which town someone's from, by like what kind of clothing they're wearing or what have you. So here are some images from this book. This is called The Door to Nowhere. It's actually the only touristy spot on this beach, but I decided to kind of make a silhouette out of it. Kind of a typical street photograph on the beach. This is two of the people that I met there. We went out and did this body painting thing. This is so the beach is like right underneath all these high cliffs. It's really quite cool. And this is also using the mirror. So this is, I had a friend holding the mirror and reflecting it onto her, and then it created this look. It was really interesting.
Is that in the book? Was that in the book, the previous one? I don't remember that being in the book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's in the book. This is a chicken. But I kind of like the colors on this. This is someone they had, and this is another fairy photo. And this was amazing because this paraglider just flew by like out of the blue. And it's really also very hard to get this mirror to do that because it's such a small beam of light. You really have to kind of move around and kneel, get on the ground, and you're telling them not to move their head. So that was, so that's 3 books. The 4th book was one that I'm not showing. And that one was I belong to a street photography collective called the DC Street Photography Collective, and we published a collaboration book. But I wanted to kind of end with this, and this is, since I've been coming to Mexico, I've been really interested in the light here and silhouettes. So here are just some photos. I've had an exhibit of these in Washington, D.C. Last year, with just kind of these nice, pleasant, silhouettes. But I wanted to get more complicated with them. This is the first one that I took where I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is like a great advertisement for San Miguel de Allende. And then, so yeah, I've been kind of pursuing this stuff around and trying to put together a series of these kinds of things that work together. And so far, it's worked because it's became an exhibit. And a lot of these are from San Miguel de Allende. There's some from Oaxaca. I was really happy, like the 3 hats. This one's from Oaxaca. So I wanted to end with this slide because here's the educational part and kind of recaps everything that I talked about. So started out by learning how to use my gear. I was doing experiments, shooting my friends and just trying to have fun. And then I started to shoot what I would normally gravitate to. So I was interested in music. I came from that background. So I was comfortable in that environment and had access to it. So that was helpful. And then read photography books about photography. anything about arts. One thing I recommend is there's like a photographer that you're like, I don't understand why everybody likes Cindy Sherman. I don't get it. Read a book about Cindy Sherman and learn something that you might be able to use. You never know you can take from somebody else who's kind of outside your realm and incorporate it. Copy the masters I mentioned. When I was reading the books, I'd come across situations where I'm like, oh, that looks like something Cartier-Bresson would do. So don't go, oh, it's been done before, I'm not going to take that photo. Try to take that photo and add something new to it. So art and photography is like a visual conversation over time, and it builds on each other over time. There's a great book called The Ongoing Moment by Jeff Dyer that talks about how photographers reference other photographers throughout history. I recommend that one. And then start looking beyond the single image, because at a certain point, you're going to be like, hey, I know how to take a good photo. So then you want to start thinking about how do you incorporate them into series? How do you make diptychs? How do you, and start thinking about that sort of thing. And then there's this photographer, Paul Graham, who gave this speech at a college about photography. It starts off, photography is easy, photography is hard. But at the end of it, he says, give it 5 years. So if you don't feel you're getting any success after 5 years, it's time to move on. But if you know you're doing well, continue with his advice. And then above all else, be true to yourself, make a vision. So that's it. Thank you.
Por compartirnos su misión, sus talentos y su camino creativo.
Oh.
Hagamos un agradecimiento a ellos.
Oh, gracias.
Gracias,
Nice.
thank you.
Thank you. Well, here, you can have
Vamos a tener un receso de 10 minutos. ¿Algunos de ustedes han comprado equipo fotográfico recientemente? Levanten la mano los que han comprado. Bueno, todos los demás tienen una oportunidad de darse una vuelta al pasillo de Estados de Tecnoplanet. Tienen equipo de televisión, conocer una cámara, ¿no? Es el momento de conocerla en persona, al fondo del pasillo de Tecnoplanet, con equipo de exhibición.
Oh, yeah.
México Street Photo Fest. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales. Primer Festival Internacional de Fotografía de Calle en México.
La fotografía de calle siempre ha sido más bien verla en un sentido de cotidianeidad, más que en una acepción propia de street photography. Ha sido más como pensar en lo cotidiano del deambular de las personas todos los días. Yo empecé haciendo fotografía en la ciudad de Oaxaca y las condiciones allá pues se reducen a un concepto más como de una población indígena, a diferencia de aquí, que como pueden ver, pues hay muchísima gente, no hay una cantidad de historias todos los días que puede uno estar haciendo.
México Street Photo Fest. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales.